Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Another episode of the Mercenary Musician Podcast. We're your host, Chad Broussard.
And I'm Peter Coulter.
And today we're going to be talking to you about ideal conditions for the city, the region, and the venue.
Yes, pretty important stuff. I actually find this kind of interesting to think about. It is, I'll admit right up front here, it is something that I have a lot of... there's a lot of unknown territory here for me, and I'm quite interested in hearing from you folks out there if you have any information to fill me in with. I haven't done too much touring as a solo cover act, really. I've played in some other cities, but for the most part, I've kind of just been in this one area, and it's been great for me. I mean, not from the start. There was a lot of learning that had to be done for it to become great, but this area has really treated me well in the last year or so. I'm in Southwest Florida, by the way. Fort Myers, Cape Coral, Naples. Mostly Naples these days, Naples, Florida. But today we're talking about ideal conditions, and I can really tell you mostly about this situation. Tell you the things that I've identified as the key factors that make this area particularly good for bar musicians. The first bullet point I've got here is tourist areas, and it says coastal towns, but I'm not sure that coastal is important. Just a tourist area really would do it. Anywhere where there's a big influx of people at a certain time of year, that makes demand for things like this. And, tourists who are expecting to be entertained in bars and restaurants specifically, that makes the demand for this type of thing swell up at a certain time of year. And so that even when it's off season, when the tourists aren't in town, there's still this sense that, there's an imminent swelling of demand for musicians, so I better try to hang on to them. There's a certain kind of mood that comes with being a tourist in a place like that, where, you need me, to an extent. And that's a thing that I know a lot of musicians, especially if you're doing strictly original stuff, they don't feel that. They don't feel needed, and they're not, unless they have something valuable, which is generally a really good following or a valuable set of skills that will, Anyway. All right. So ideal conditions, tourist areas, swelling demand, all that stuff. Another bullet point I've got here is a place where there are a lot of competing restaurants. Obviously, this makes some sense. So restaurants are a primary venue for this type of work, for bar work. That's really the first place you're going to start, restaurants and bars. There's another thing I'd add here, aside from just competing restaurants, which is, by the way, pretty closely related with tourist areas. If you got a lot of people kind of flocking to a place, there's going to be a lot of demand for restaurants, for entertainment, and thus a lot of competition for that business. If there's a lot of business, there's going to be a lot of businesses trying to fill that need. And there are in this area. There are tons of restaurants and bars, and they're all competing with each other. And having good live music at a place regularly sets you apart in a really competitive market, and it's worth the money to restaurants if they know what they're doing and their clientele would respond to that.
Absolutely.
Even if their clientele wouldn't respond to that, if they suspect their clientele might, they'll give it a shot, and they should give it a shot for a couple months to see if it'll work.
Now, they should, but they don't always.
They don't always. I've had lots of venues hire me not really understanding what it is I do, not understanding what the value is, and frankly, it takes two. My inability to really articulate what the value would be to them and how it works at that time in my career. I could do it now. The value being you're playing for people who are going to stay a little longer, drink a couple more drinks, eat another appetizer, and or tell their friends all about how their live music here is cool. Oh, we can go to this one Italian restaurant or this other Italian restaurant down the road. Had this guitarist there who was just sick and funny, and he made the time so much fun. They don't talk like that. These are boomers in my area mostly, so they don't say this dude was sick. But they say that essentially to their friends, and then their friends go, and then their friends go and like it, and they say the same thing, and it builds like that. It's not, I'm bringing a following to your Italian restaurant, dude. Sorry, that's just ridiculous.
But that doesn't mean you couldn't build one over time there.
That's exactly right. You build a following with the clientele that are there.
But you have to be able to convey that.
Yeah, man, I'm a 31-year-old guy who doesn't drink. My friends aren't, like, I don't have a large group of friends who are going to come with me to an Italian restaurant to watch me play covers in a bar. That's just not what this is about. Anyway, so we're off topic a little bit here, but competing restaurants, competing venues. I would add another thing to this list is lots of country clubs kind of related to this. That's one great thing about this area is there are just tons of country clubs, and they pay pretty well. They're oftentimes looking for entertainment, and they can pay pretty well. They're kind of one of those things where it's almost like working with the government. Not one. I don't work with the government very much, but
just the way it's
kind of set up, where it's not really the booker's money. When you work at a restaurant, a lot of times you're talking directly to a manager or owner who's just like, I'm looking at the numbers. I know exactly what this place can take, and it can't take $300 right now every Saturday, or or whatever. That's not the case in country clubs. So that's what's kind of cool about them is you can generally get a higher rate out of them.
Would it be safe to say, because it's a country club, that maybe most musicians wouldn't even think to go there? So you might have a better chance of securing a gig that way?
Yeah, I didn't think about it for a long time.
Less competition for musicians.
Yeah, it's a bit of a secret, so don't tell anybody. Shh. But
you heard it here first.
Yeah, playing at country clubs I'm not going to say it's like untapped. I mean, there are musicians who do it, definitely, but the competition, it's not as fierce for sure. I have country clubs call me all the time. Not all the time, but every other month or so, I hear from a country club that's like, "Hey, I'm looking for a musician. Heard you at a," and this is where momentum comes into play, and where I want you to not give up in the beginning when you have one gig for a year or two gigs for a year. I mean, not a year, but when it feels like you're not building your schedule. Excuse me. When it feels like it's not building, stick with it, because a lot of this is momentum. I've got more work than I need now. And it's because I've been in these gigs for so long and people see me out. That's really one of the best ways to market yourself is people see you out there and they're like, I work for a country club. I'm taking your business card. So yeah, anyway, back to the main thread here. Ideal conditions for the city, region, and venue. Competing restaurants and lots of country clubs are a good bullet point for this. This I'm actually not 100% sure of anymore, this bullet point. It's like non-mecca music locations, which I'm just want to put a little pin in this because I'm still not 100% sure about this. I think that there are lots of musicians who do make a good living in like Nashville or New Orleans. I have friends in New Orleans, and I will grill them a little bit and might make some future changes to this as I do more research. But they make a living there, and it doesn't strike me as a situation where they do as well as I do. And a lot of times these guys are in bands. It's not like you go to New Orleans and they don't want necessarily a guy playing acoustic guitar. Maybe they do, but they want a jazz band or a funk band or something for the most part.
There's too many musicians there. World class, well trained.
That's right. You walk down the street in New Orleans and the guy in the corner would be the best guy in Fort Myers sometimes, Anyway, so I would, especially if you're kind of like average, there are places in this country, I know because I live in one, where an average musician, I mean above average if you include like all absolute beginners, but like a person who considers themselves a musician, take the average of that. Those people can make a good living doing this in this area, and there are lots of places in the country, I believe, like that. I don't think Nashville is one of them. I don't think you can be like kind of good and make a great
Well, I will touch on the New Orleans.
I don't want to tell you no, but
just because it doesn't work in the city of New Orleans doesn't mean it doesn't work in the suburbs of New Orleans.
That's another point for sure. These suburbs are a lot more like these other areas. Not that they're tourist areas necessarily, but they've got a lot of competing restaurants. They got a big population who goes out to eat. Yep. So they've got a lot of competing restaurants. There are country clubs out there. Suburbs, I think, is kind of the key to the big cities.
And they usually have the clusters of restaurants. Right?
Right.
Like the city centers.
Strip areas, right? Yeah, city centers, yeah. Like a suburban city center, like they're their own cities. People a lot of times don't leave those suburbs very much.
Yeah, no. People don't like to drink and drive long distances.
I'll put it this way too. So I have worked in Atlanta very briefly. I did one gig in Atlanta. So full disclosure, I've got a buddy who used to do this work down here. He's a really great guy. I'm going to mention his name. I'm not sure. This is my first time actually mentioning somebody's name, but Keith Klug is the guy's name. Keefe Klug.
Let's give it up for Keith.
Yeah, Keith's great. I love him, and he's one of the better guys that was down in this area. And his wife got a job in Atlanta, and they moved to Atlanta. And I was really, because I'm planning on moving to Atlanta myself, I was really keeping an eye on that. And I'm like, oh, what's Atlanta like for guys like us up there? And I've been speaking to him, and he's like just a great guy. He showed me around last time I was there and put me up on a gig, and we split the gig. He's just like a really great dude. Check him out. We'll tag his Instagram in here. Follow him around, especially if you're in Atlanta. Anyway, he does basically what I do at the level I do. He's really great, and of course, I think I am really great as well. And so I was really curious how his career was going to go up there, and he kind of like immediately met a booking agent, which I personally don't use for my thing, but the way Keith is using it, I think is really good, where you basically have a guy who just books your whole week up for you. It is a little bit at one point of failure-y, I think. If something goes really wrong with the booking agent, you're kind of like toast, I guess. But he got up there and like quickly met the right guy, and just by being social and being cool and being friendly, and the guy put him on a bunch of gigs, and he's got a weekly schedule now, like pretty quickly after moving to a big city. And I'll tell you this about the gig that I split with him. It was in a suburb. It was like 40 minutes drive from the center, 30-minute drive from the center. There's traffic. And it was a fucking packed event at a bar in a suburb city center, like you were talking about. Mm-hmm. And there was a base pay, it was like a real base pay, just like down here. And the tips were great. And honestly, the audience was way better than most audiences down here, because they were looking for music, and it was like so refreshing to see young people in the world. Everyone down here is 75 years old, so it's nice to be in a city with like a youthful energy to it. But I'll tell you what, that was a little eye-opening for me. Like I'm planning on moving there, so obviously I know it's possible, or I wouldn't be just uprooting and going. But like it was really eye-opening to see, there are just like, these are exactly nearly identical to the gigs down in Fort Myers. Mm-hmm. You just get a base pay and you get tips and you're out of there, and you get free drinks if you drink, and like usually a free meal. It's like the same exact thing, and it's a huge city. I wouldn't call Atlanta I think Atlanta could be considered an A market if you know the terms A, B, and C markets. I'm in a C market for like music, original music, and the industry and stuff. I think Atlanta is like a high B or maybe a low A. It's not like New York City or Nashville or something, but it's kind of up there.
Growing.
And it is growing
for the future.
And it is growing.
It might be a good landing spot.
So anyway, that's the only like big city I've played a paying gig in, and it went really well, and it was it was great. So I know it's possible in big cities, and I think that is kind of the key, is go for suburbs. The great thing about that is, I've got a lot of friends who do this down here and think that this is like some sort of utopian oasis for cover musicians, and it's not possible to do this elsewhere. And I just think that's bullshit. I mean, I kind of know it's bullshit because my buddy Keith is up in Atlanta doing it. So I'm the great thing, if you're like me, and I imagine many of you are. I don't know that I'd be curious to see what the makeup of the crowd is. What percentage of people are just like, I am content doing just covers for the rest of my life. This is a fun job. I know people who are like that. But I'm curious to see how many of you are like, yeah, I'm doing covers and I have an original career I work on, and the reason I do covers is to keep me alive and keep my bills paid and even save for my retirement, God forbid. And I also want my music career to go off at some point. That's me. That's where I'm at. So the great thing about the idea of playing in a big city and just like knocking these suburbs out and making $200-300 plus tips in these suburbs of big cities is, if you're an original person, you are near a big song city, a big music city where like people are actively looking for original music. They're not here really in large numbers. They're not like trying to discover the next, oh my God, this up and coming thing out of Fort Myers. They're not. So, I mean, it's possible the internet has changed a lot of things, obviously, but it still would be good if you're trying to be an original musician to go to a real city where things are happening.
Absolutely.
So that's kind of one of the things, and I consider this kind of a little bit of a question mark on my map a bit. obviously I have some insight. I was just talking about Atlanta, but I want to hear from you guys. If you live in Nashville or you live in Chicago or New York or New Orleans or something,
Austin,
LA, any of these like big music cities, I want to hear what it's like there. If you're doing anything like this, or if you just assumed it couldn't be done, which I would like for you to challenge if that's your assumption, or if you are doing it, or if you're not doing it, or if you're halfway doing it, or if you're just trying to do the original thing and you work in an office. Like, tell me what it's like being in a big city. And I would love to, you just hop in on the ground floor with us. We're probably going to charge for this at some point. But if you want to chat with us and get some consulting, I'd love to just like talk with you about it. So hit us up. We'll have our email address. What is it? Peter@mercenarymethods.com.
correct.
Peter@mercenarymethods.com. Yeah. So we'll have all this stuff in the show notes too. So check that out. Get in touch. I want to hear about these big cities. This is kind of a, we're doing the thing. This will be a theme in our episodes. We're doing the telescoping thing where we zoom in and zoom out. So this is kind of a zoom out thing for just for businesses in general. Ideally, you want to go to a place where there's low supply and high demand, or some sort of tension between the supply and demand that works in your favor as the supplier, right? So you want to go, this is where like drug dealing comes from. There's high demand for cocaine. There's low supply for cocaine because of government regulations mostly. And if you take drugs from a place where there's high supply and relatively moderate demand and take it to a place where there's low supply and high demand, you can mark it up a lot, sell it for a lot more money than you bought it for, and become exorbitantly wealthy, and then try to
Scarface.
Yeah, right. We all know it's tales old as time. Everybody, we all know what low supply and high demand means. So that's what I'm talking about. Go to a place where there's low supply and high demand, and that brings me back to the non-mecca music location. Mm-hmm. Why they make me nervous is because you're surrounded by world-class musicians. So there will be, even if there is high demand, I think that Nashville is one of those places where there is high demand, but I think there's also very high supply. So I'm, again, I mean, if you're, and here's another point. If you're fucking excellent, like if you are the top 1% of 1% at, and I'm not just talking about as a guitarist. I mean, that's great. You can be a session musician, fine. I'm talking about as a guitarist, as a public speaker, getting a crowd with you, as a singer, all those things combined. If you're like shining star at all that stuff, and just one of the most, maybe the most important of those three is the crowd control thing. If you are great at those, you're going to probably have work everywhere you go. I mean, it's like being being really good at entertaining a crowd full of people in a bar or restaurant is like being a doctor. You're wanted everywhere. Mm-hmm. Anywhere where there are musicians and people to be entertained, pretty much, or bars and people to be entertained in them, you'll have some work. Yeah, so go to a place where there's low supply and high demand, and I think that is kind of where I am right now. There's a huge demand. And this is where like C market comes into play. Come into play. Not a lot of musicians want to be here for good reason. I don't want to be here. I'm about to not be here. If you're like a musician, you don't want to be in a fucking retirement community in South Florida where, you're the youngest person within 100 miles.
But that depends, because correct me if I'm wrong, you're leaving to better have an opportunity at making something with your original content as opposed to being a full-time cover artist.
Right.
So wouldn't that be a little different if you're just trying to make a career out of being a cover artist?
Yeah, I think it is different. If you're just trying to make a career out of being a cover artist, come to Fort Myers right now. Come to Naples.
So would it be safe to say that C markets might be more appealing for aspiring cover artists?
They might be, sure. But I want to talk to both. I want to talk to both of you guys. The people who are like, yes, I want to be a cover musician and make $100,000 a year just playing cover songs 4 days a week. That sounds great to me. That is doable. Come to Naples, I think. At least Naples is the one I know most about. I can help you the most with. I could probably hook you up with the gigs down here if you come to Naples. Where that brings me to an interesting idea: starting a little booking agency. We'll talk about that later. Mm-hmm. Things in the works. So yeah, if you want to just be a cover musician, Naples is a great place to do it. I think C markets with a lot of tourist activity are a great place to do it. Places where where boomers are touring. You know, places that you're not going to get discovered. Not that, I hate to use that word, not that like being discovered is the way you should push your original music career either. Topic for a different day, but you're not going to like run into the right people. You're not going to make the right connections. The right audience is likely not here for your metal band or whatever. You know, like if you're trying to do an original career thing, you're not trying to do it for boomers. Boomers aren't looking for new music. They want to hear Tom Petty. So yeah, if you want to do just this, and I don't think there's anything wrong with it. It's a fucking better than working in a bank, better than being a lawyer. I make like this year, it looks like for the first time, I don't want to sugarcoat this. Last 5 years have not been this good, especially 2020, obviously, with COVID. But this year has been, it's like lawyer money. I'm making better money than beginning lawyers, and I don't have to go to law school, and I don't have to take on all that debt, and I don't have to do something I fucking hate. You know, I don't have to do it 6 days a week for 14 hours a day. I do it 4 days a week, probably averaging maybe 8 hours a day or something. 2 of my days are like 14-hour days, Saturday and Sunday, but Thursday through Sunday is my work week, and I'm making like good money this year. So anyway, yeah, if you're trying to do this full time, I'd come here or a place like this. And I'd like to, as we move on through this podcast, I would like to compile a list of cities like this, cities that are ideal. And we'll do that. That'll be a project we'll work on for you guys. Something that is a list of like, here are the best cities we've found for this particular thing in order. And Naples is going to be near the top, I got to say.
Yeah, essentially any coastal town in Florida is going to cut it.
Pretty much, yeah. Every coastal town in Florida for the most part. And again, you know, we're talking about maybe Miami is a little different. Although I've got a booking agent who has reached out to me and is trying to book me in Miami. You know, they're $300 for 4-hour gigs, and he's taking a cut, so they're probably $350 for 4-hour gigs.
Yeah, I think Tampa, Miami, and Jacksonville might be the hardest markets in Florida. But aside from that, I don't think it'd be too different.
Probably. Maybe Orlando, too. But, I mean, all those places, again, it would be high demand, high supply would be the issue. It wouldn't be low demand. It'd be high demand for musicians and high supply because those places are cooler and more attractive to musicians. I will say this, though, man. Even those places, I think maybe is this less the case in Nashville because Nashville is pretty fucking Disney-fied. But I think that a lot of these musicians who are attracted to these places, like if you go to Atlanta, as far as like a music city, it's a lot of like metal people and it's a lot of like rap people, and they're not fucking doing these gigs in bars. You know, they're not probably able to for the most part. They don't want hip hop or metal in a bar. They want cover songs on an acoustic guitar. You know,
so what they consider a human jukebox, which we intend to change.
Maybe, yeah, something like. I mean, they want you to take requests. That's absolutely certain.
Yeah.
Anyway. I think we've tangented enough on low supply, high demand, haven't we?
Sounds good. What about traveling musician?
Okay, this I've never done. This is just an idea.
Like a traveling nurse.
Sort of, yeah. I would say I'm actually this is part of my strategy moving forward, I think. The bullet point says, just so you're all aware, seasonal traveling musician.
It's like a snow musician.
Like a snow musician, a snowbird, as we call them. People who live down here from like December through April and then live up north for the rest of the year. Yeah, so I'm thinking about doing this for the first year or two that I moved to Atlanta. Spend the summertime, 4 to 6 months in Atlanta, playing gigs, making connections, hanging out, and then come down here for winter for 6 months, December through May, I guess. I know that's not all winter, of course. Winter's 3 months. But, come down here for the season and make that money while it's really here, and then go back to Atlanta in the summertime. That's kind of, it's an idea I'm playing with. I know that it's possible. I think it could be cool if you don't have any other commitments, or if you are, I don't know, with a partner who's like flexible that way. That could be really fun. Or if you're single, obviously, and not in like a band or something. This would take a kind of a person with a flexible partner, like I have a very flexible partner, or it would take a person with no other commitments to kind of do this, I think. But it's doable, and it sounds kind of like a cool idea to me. I know waiters that do it. I've met waiters and bartenders that do it. They come down to Florida, and they work December through May, and then they go to Lake of the Ozarks for the summertime. And they take a month off in between each, or a month and a half off in between each. And it's just like pretty relaxed lifestyle. I mean, it's intense. Waiting tables during season here can be intense, but you know, it's a cool way to do it. And I mean, I know I met like a 50-something-year-old waiter at one of my seasonal waiter jobs when I was younger, and this guy seemed like dumb as a box of rocks, and in some ways he kind of was. I mean, we talked earlier about like different types of intelligence, but this guy was like a dullard. He was like not fun to talk to. He just seemed so slow and dumb, kind of to talk to. But he was sharp in some ways, and he had been doing this seasonal waiter thing for like 20 years. He owned a house in Lake of the Ozarks. He owned a house down here, and he had them like kind of like seasonally rented. And I mean, the dude was probably worth $500,000 as a waiter. You know, it's like not every waiter you know is worth $500,000. And he just did some business up there when the season was high and some business down here when the season's high, and was just a boring guy in between. You know, he just had an interesting business mind and went for it and did it, you know, and that can work. All right. So we're getting down. We did a lot of stuff on the city and region here. So we're going to talk a little bit more specifically about the venue, which we could really do a whole separate episode about the venue, couldn't we? But we'll just briefly touch on it, and then we'll dig into it maybe later. We'll probably dig into both of these, city, region as its own kind of topic, and then venue as its own kind of topic later, and we'll just really get down into it real dirty. I'd say the first thing you were looking for in a venue, other than obviously for it to be located in one of the regions or cities that we kind of talked about, would be the person you're booking with or manager really, first of all, being kind of easy to work with, and also, quote unquote, getting it. Now, there's something to be said for like explaining it to a manager so that they get it more. You should do that to an extent, but I mean, ideally, a manager or a owner of a place calls you up and is like, "Hey, man, you're a great musician. I've seen you. You're the best in town," or whatever. You know, if you're not getting the gig that way, however they found you. "Hey, I found your number here. We've got a bar, and we pay $300 for 3 hours or 4 hours, maybe, or $250. I mean, they're going to offer you. They might offer you less, but we're talking about the ideal situation here. When we come in with a fair rate, hey, it's $300 for 3 hours. We'll feed you a meal. The crowd here is great. They love musicians. And I heard you're really good. Come in." That would be ideal. That's pretty rare, but it happens. Honestly, it happens with country clubs more often than anything else. A country club person will, and this is usually, again, the referral will matter here. If you're just pulling yourself up by the bootstraps, you won't be getting referrals like, "Hey, I heard you at a venue," obviously. But, "Hey, I heard your demo," or "Thanks for reaching out. We are looking for musicians," might be the way that they refer to your referral. And I love your style. You'd fit perfectly here. We pay $100 an hour, and we feed you. How's that? Like, that would be kind of ideal. Yeah, so a manager or a booking agent that like gets it, that understands that you're not going to bring a crowd to their bar. That's not what you are. You're a cover musician. You play for the people who are there. Okay, you advertise it on your thing, you know, on your Instagram and your Facebook and all that. You put your schedule out there so people who do follow you can follow you.
Yeah.
But you're not going to bring a crowd of 12 people everywhere you go.
Well,
especially when you're doing it 7 times a week, you know.
It'd be ideal, like you said, having the manager say, like, there's a good crowd already here.
There's a good crowd already here. Or even, like, there's a small group of regular, even, like, if they let you know that they understand what the fuck is going on.
Yeah.
There's a small group of regulars here who have been asking for live music, maybe even. Or whatever, you know. A lot of times the best ones are, you're replacing a guy that's on our roster because they do it. They know what the fuck is going on. Oftentimes, the only kind of downside of those is they have kind of fixed rates a lot of times. They like know what people, they book musicians 7 times a week, and they know what the rate can be when they put downward pressure on it. So they give you that bottom, like the floor of the local rate. There's a place I play weekly that I absolutely love, and that pays me below my floor rate, really, but I keep my floor a little flexible. And the reason I'm bringing this venue up, I'm not going to name it by name, but the reason I bring this venue up is because it's close to an ideal situation for me. They book me every week, rain or shine, season or off season, and they pay a flat fee. Granted, again, this is below my floor rate, right? But I took the gig because the guy who I knew through somebody said, "Look, I know that I actually gave him my rate, and he said, "Ooh, I can't do that. The best I can do is this," which was below my floor rate. I believe that most other musicians, if they didn't argue, are being paid less than I am because I pushed, which is, we'll do another episode about negotiating your price. But, he said, I can't do your rate. I can do this. And I said, well, but he said, I assure you the tips here are absolutely insane and we'll make up for it. And I said, all right, I'll give it a chance. Like this is an open slot in my schedule. I'll give it a chance. Let's do it. I hopped in, and it was right after COVID, so I was reforming my schedule anyway. Hopped in, I did a few gigs, and it was like, oh, guys, totally right. The tips are insane. This is like absolutely incredible. And so I make in season, certainly, I actually have my record for most tips in a single gig there. I made $406 in tips there in a 4-hour gig. So, that's insane. On top of the base rate, which is not nothing. It's off season now. It's end of August is like almost the very worst of off season here. It's like hurricane season, and it's 100 degrees outside every day, and it's not where people want to be on vacation right now. Middle of off season, it like rains a lot of times. This is out on the beach. Sometimes I'm playing to nobody, but they book me every single Sunday, and they pay me my rate. Not my rate, but they pay their rate. And it's, it's a solid, stable gig. It pays me every damn week. That's another ideal condition type of thing. If they're willing to pay you, and it's every single week, you can give them a little cut on the break too, because it's like buying in bulk. It's like how Costco can do it. It's like, man, you're saving me all this trouble having to book more gigs. You're saving me all this trouble having to fucking do more paperwork, et cetera, et cetera. And not only that, but when season comes around, the tips are absolutely insane. So it's like, it's just a good gig. So it's got some ideal conditions on it. It's got some not ideal conditions on it in that they're not paying me my rate that I wanted. I would much prefer right now, especially during off season when there's no tips, to be getting my full rate. But, can't always get what you want. Another thing that's a smaller deal is venue inclusions, which are like meals and drinks. That can be, that's fine. I don't want to downplay it. It's really nice when a venue gives you a meal. Drinks, obviously, I don't drink anymore, so that doesn't matter to me. And actually, it was a bit of an issue for me giving up because I'm a pretty frugal guy. I like to keep track of my money. And I was feeling like I was just leaving money on the table when a bar bought me 3 drinks and I didn't drink them. This is like part of the problem. Part of my problem when I was trying to quit is I was like, man, they're giving me free drinks. If I don't drink them, I'm leaving money on the table, which is kind of silly. If it's damaging you, even if it's free, who cares? Don't drink it anyway. But meals are great, especially like I'm on doubles on Saturdays and Sundays. Both of my gigs on Sunday, the Sunday gigs are like a regular weekly, like double-barreled shotgun of gigs right there. Every Sunday is the same double every week, which is excellent. Every Saturday is the same first gig every week, and Saturday nights are they rotate. But on those doubles, man, the fact that I get a free meal at both of those gigs, it like almost makes it possible. Not possible, but it makes it way more comfortable. Like I don't have to get up. It's a brunch gig. The first one on Saturday and Sunday is brunch gigs, and I don't have to get up at 8:30 and make sure I force breakfast in. I hate eating early in the morning. It makes me not like the fact that I get a meal means that I don't have to like feel like shit for 4 hours until I get off work, then rush to a McDonald's, then eat whatever I can get on the way, and then feel like shit more, and then go to my next gig and try to live on 4 hours of McDonald's digestion. And I could eat at the place still and pay for it, but a lot of times these restaurants, I don't want to spend $30 at every gig to eat, So it's really nice when a venue gives you meals. It's just nice. And a lot of times it's like an afterthought. They don't care. A lot of times you can make the whole deal. Oftentimes this is what I do. I don't even do it on purpose just because most venues do this. Mm-hmm. Most venues give you meals and drinks. It's unusual for a venue not to. Sometimes they'll do half off, but even that is unusual, at least around here. But a lot of times you do it as an afterthought. You negotiate your whole pay, and then you're like, do you guys include a meal? And 99% of the time, they're like, yes, or let me ask and then say yes, Mm-hmm. So it's nice. It helps. And it's nice to, honestly, I don't spend as much on groceries as I would. I'm like, or eating out as I would. I get to eat out all the time, which is cool. Something to think about here. The reason why this is so like common is because their food costs are a lot lower generally than the price they sell it for. Food costs are are pretty well. Food costs are one of the biggest expenses of a restaurant, but it's less. It's like for them it might cost them. It just doesn't cost them that much to serve you a meal. It doesn't cost as much as you think. It's not,
Yeah, if you like what you ate, mention it.
And I was just getting to that. Yes. So one of the big reasons for them to feed you is
be an ambassador.
You can be an ambassador to their stuff. Drinking at a gig, actually, the fact that I don't do it can be kind of not a good thing, because being able to be like, hey, cheers everyone, thanks, grab a drink. Sometimes people want to buy me drinks, and I would like to be able to say, yeah, and I actually do. Sometimes I will talk to a bar and be like, I don't drink alcohol. If somebody wants to buy me a drink, make me a seltzer with a lime or something.
Peter Special.
Right.
Looks like a gin and tonic, but it's not.
Exactly right.
And
or you can be really honest. A lot of times I'll be really honest. I'm just like, I don't drink. I'll have a Red Bull or something. Don't drink Red Bulls too late, but something like, saying you don't drink can make people feel weird in bars. So be a little bit careful with that. There should be a whole episode on that, which you can skip if you're just a drinker. That's fine. Mm-hmm. Okay, another ideal condition for a venue is that it's financially stable, that the paycheck, that the check cashes, that the check deposits, that doesn't bounce, and they don't come at you with sob stories like we're going under. This gig that I play that has musicians every single day of the week, they don't have a fucking problem paying musicians. The checks clear every single time. They've got the money to do this. They're not going to nickel and dime you. They're not going to look at you sideways when the crowd's slow, because they have the money and they know that what they're doing is like paying for nice furniture or something, or nice lighting, or nice artwork in their establishment, or a top-notch chef. They understand that what they're paying for needs to be in place all the time, and they have the money to keep it in place. That's important. I've had gigs where the checks don't clear, and you got to hound the person for the money, and it's just like, don't do it. It's a red flag. You don't need that gig. Yeah.
Are there some ways to kind of flesh that out?
Yeah, you can talk to brand new restaurants can be like that. I mean, in the bad way. But they can also be the opposite. I mean, if they're like well-funded restaurants, they can be just the opposite. I'd say as a general rule, new restaurants, I wouldn't like immediately go to a new restaurant and be like, hey, do you guys want live music? It's better to be in places where they already have live music, where they know the value of it and they keep it, and they keep it all year. Mm-hmm. Would be good. Talk to the musicians who work there. You can follow the Instagram pages of these venues, and look at the musicians who play there, and then follow their Instagrams and make friends with them. And this is something you should be doing in any community that you're in. If you're trying to be a musician, you need to be making friends with other musicians and other people who are doing this work. I'm going to go off on a tiny little tangent here. Making friends with other musicians is the best way to start getting gigs. I have too many gigs. I can't take every gig. If I knew more good musicians who were free and didn't have work right now, they would be getting phone calls. I call my friends all the time and I say, hey, can you pick up this gig? And they say, nope. I get like 6 no's when I go ask if someone can cover a gig for me. So make friends with me. You know what I mean? In your town. Find me in your town and make friends with him and just be nice.
If you're lucky enough.
And go, oh, thank you. Just go out to these gigs and tip the fucking musician and talk to him in the break and say, hey, I do this. Would love to chat with you. If you ever need a sub for gigs, I mean, there are ways to approach people like this. And if somebody came up to me like that and said, hey, you're really great. I'm sure that you run into people who claim to be musicians a lot, but I promise I'm good. Let's connect, and I'd love to do some sub work for you if you have more work than you can handle. I'd be like, fuck, dude, where have you been? Mm-hmm. Thank you so much. You're just going to allow me to take a day off when I need it. Yep. That's going to allow me to go to my sister's baby's christening. It's a niece is what that's called. My niece's christening. I've got actually a new guy in my life who's like this. He's kind of new to the area. He's a piano player, and he's a singer, and he does my job, basically. And he actually came out of the blue and was like, hey, can I hook you up with this gig? And I was like, yes, you can. Thank you. I also have gigs. What's your schedule like? He's like, it's pretty open. So the dude's covering shit for me. It's fucking awesome.
Sweet.
Yeah, and he's, and I've got another guy who's kind of popping into my life soon here, it looks like, who has shown up at a couple gigs, has tipped me, has made friends with me, and he's a nice kid, and he's just like, I'm good. I can do this. I would like to do this. And like, how do you do this? How do you get started with this? And I was like, it's funny you should ask. I'm creating a course about this exact thing. So he'll actually probably be on the podcast at some point.
You're doing what? That's the first time it's been mentioned.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're making a course called... I didn't know that, huh? Uh-huh. All right, well, there's the big reveal. We're making a course called the Mercenary Musician. Get on our email list, and we'll keep you apprised of that, and we'll help you more directly get going here. We do have a free quick start guide, though, that we want to get you on for free, baby. Just kind of a few little points to hit. There's tons of information on this podcast, obviously, that you can sift through, but this quick start guide will be a little more pointed of an effort at getting you the first bricks laid down on the ground to get the basis going for this. Yep. So I don't know if you guys can tell, but we're full transparency with you guys. I just want you to know what we're doing here. We're doing a podcast for you for free. We're putting out a free quick start guide. I am going to show you just like the very foundation of this stuff, and then we're going to try to sell you a course. Mercenaries, baby. It's a theme. We're trying to make that money.
We're trying to make you mercenaries.
That's right. We're all going to be mercenaries together. We're all going to be filthy rich.
In closing...
Not guaranteed.
Let's go over some red flags. Now, I know we discussed in relation to the venue when you're dealing with a manager or booking agent and they expect you to bring a crowd. That's one.
Yeah, that's a big one.
Or for
and they say, hey, what's your following like? Just leave.
Yeah. Or financially secure, as we just touched on. But are there other red flags that you can kind of see or better help determine whether or not it's the right gig for you or the right region? Yeah,
there's the type of manager, there are just more things. Most of the red flags are going to probably come out of the manager's mouth or the guy who's booking you's mouth. Stuff like what we kind of talked about, where what's your following like is a big red flag. Talking bad about other musicians they've worked with before.
That's a good one.
I had one particular
that's a real good
venue I sat down with, and they were like, yeah, most musicians want this and that and this and that, and they want this and that, and then they don't bring anybody out. And I'm like, yeah, I'm like that. I want this and that and this and that, and I won't bring anybody out. So bye. You know what I mean? It's just talking down about other musicians is usually not good. Even if somebody has something not nice to say about a former musician, I have a few gigs that are like that, where the people who book me are like, man, you're a lot better than this last person. They'll even be nice about that. They'll just say, she was a really nice lady and she was good at what she was doing, but it was just like really too slow. Mm-hmm. They won't even say boring. It was just kind of too slow for the feel, that type of thing. A good booking agent usually will even be nice about that. They're not going to be like, fucking musician was such a piece of shit. I mean, it's possible that the person was a piece of shit. I'm not saying all musicians are not pieces of shit, but you know what I mean. It's just like
it's bad optics.
It's bad optics. Just look out for that type of thing. I had a manager once who said something like, "I don't see the difference in the numbers when you guys are here and when you're not here." This was a duo I was in, and that's a red flag. That's him not understanding what the fuck is going on. Mm-hmm. It should, to some extent, affect the numbers in a big picture, but like we had not been playing here for more than a month. It was like he was expecting us to show up and the numbers be different that night, and that's just not what we're doing here. So that's just any kind of comment that reveals that this person doesn't understand what is going on is a red flag. And I don't mean you should just quit necessarily. You might be in a position where you should just take as much money as you can out of it, or I hope that we'll be able to arm you with some knowledge that will let you kind of talk your way into a manager understanding this stuff better. Say, that's, the fact that it's not affecting the numbers is not necessarily a sign that this isn't working, just so you know. I mean, I'm just, kind of just improvising as if I were talking to a manager here who does not get it. So, just the fact that we're not seeing a difference in the numbers week to week is not necessarily a sign that this isn't working. There could be a lot of other factors that are causing the numbers to be the same. Maybe this would have, first of all, maybe this would have been a worse night if we hadn't been here. You know, maybe it would have been a downturn in the numbers, and the numbers looking like they haven't changed. I mean, don't get too sciencey with bar managers, but you know, it could be that it is working and that it's not properly reflected in the numbers because it's not going to be a straight line up. But it could also be that this is more of a long-term thing where people are going to talk about the fact that there is just generally live music here and come here more. They might come here on another day more. They might come here when there's no music on a Monday afternoon because now they know the place and they think it's cool that you have music.
I prefer to go out earlier in the week because it's dead.
Yeah,
you get the place to yourself.
Yeah, and you like there's a place locally that does live music. It's like kind of part of its shtick. It's got a stage in the place. It's kind of part of the game for it. And would you say that you go there more when there's not music even than you would if it weren't a place that you went to see music? Confusingly phrased question.
Yeah, a little bit.
But like, would you go sometimes when there's not music, right?
I do.
You know?
I do.
And would you ever go there if there weren't live music, if you hadn't kind of discovered it through music?
Probably not.
So there you go.
Probably not.
And that's an anecdotal.
So here's the
anecdotal and kind of non-committal story there, but still, that's kind of the idea that I'm going for here.
Personally, I'm willing to drive further distance to catch a live show than I am just to go to a bar.
Yes.
Because I know at the end of the day, I don't want to be behind the wheel after having a couple.
Yeah.
And when you go to a show, it's an experience. When you go to a bar, it's just another night.
Yeah, you're out drinking. So that's an interesting kind of way to think about this. Putting live music, being known as a place that has live music, it increases your.
Sets you out.
And this
sets
is
your side, yeah.
Yeah. Well, this is actually kind of a comment that's directed at bar managers. Having live music in your establishment is a place that expands your radius of influence. Like Chad just mentioned, he'll drive further to get to your place if it has music. So it opens you up to another sector of crowd that wouldn't drive to your place just to have drinks on a random night. But since there's music, they will.
It's a huge incentive for customers to have live music. And
for certain customers, it's a massive for certain customers, other bars in the area, if they're not having live music and one is, they can all go fuck themselves and they're going to the one with music.
And that's
for a lot of customers, that's the case.
Having live music at your venue is going to allow you to attract non-drinkers, which is not the case when you don't have it.
That's true.
People are just going to watch the game from home. They don't need to be in the environment surrounded by a bunch of drunks.
That's right.
Right? But if you have live music, people are coming to see whoever it is that's playing, the artist, the band.
A lot of times, yeah. And, people, even like DDs, designated drivers have a lot of control over where the fucking car goes, too. You know what I mean? So if you're a designated driver and you're like, I don't want to sit around and watch y'all drink. I would rather go to a show.
Yeah.
Then that's where the car's going a lot of times,
Absolutely.
So like it really, for certain restaurants, it makes really great sense to have live music. Ooh, I've got another ideal condition for a venue actually. So my brunch gig is situated in a mall. And it, I think, is maybe the perfect location for what I do.
What kind of mall?
It's like an outdoor mall. It's called Mercado in Naples is the name of the mall.
Okay.
And I play actually at the mall. That's how I got this gig. I was hired by the mall to play. And I went and played there, and a shop in the mall, a restaurant in the mall, had a manager that was looking for live music, heard me and was like, ooh, I got to get this guy's business card, which you should have. Grabbed my business card. They called me and they booked me regularly. And I love this gig. It's even in off season, it's an outdoor gig. So it is 100 degrees outside sometimes. And it can be pretty slow in off season, but they pay me through off season because they know they're going to have a hard time getting me back if they let me go. Part of the reason because of the swell and demand thing we talked about with tourist area thing. When things pick back up, they're going to want me there. And they're going to want me there every week, like they have me. So the thing that makes this gig so ideal, though, is that it's in a mall, an outdoor mall, and it's located very close to like a main thoroughfare, walking thoroughfare. So there are people cruising by all the time, and I'm outside, and they have some specials while I'm there, which is a smart idea as well. And I'm on the mic there, even if I weren't playing music and I weren't doing anything, just sitting there like chatting on a microphone and saying, hey, everybody, we've got bottomless mimosas, the Bloody Mary bar, and a full brunch menu in here. Come on in. Come on, everybody. Come on in.
Yeah, and
you're like a carnival barker to some extent, but you're there drawing attention to people walking by. You got a crowd, people walk right in, and managers can. The thing that makes this so great is A, it gives you kind of a crowd is going to show up if there are people out there.
Yeah.
B, the manager can fucking see what's happening.
Yeah.
You can just stand right there and watch this guy pull people in off the thoroughfare.
It's free marketing.
It's
not free, but it's additional marketing.
I would be shocked if I ever lose this gig because of that, because of how perfectly situated it is for me to like. And this is one of those cases, one of the, I'd say, rare cases where the manager has actually told me, he's like, I can see the difference in the numbers. It's like immediately clear. You put music on, the numbers have changed. And that's awesome. That's job security right there.
And we discussed this later on in an episode about audience and crowds, and we delve a little bit deeper into it and kind of give you some ideas as to how you can do that for the venue and also for the location that you're at. So if it's, you know, in your coastal town, there's a lot of historical stuff there. In that episode, we delve into how you can kind of familiarize yourself and become a tour guide almost. So that's going to be in chapter 13.
Yes. Okay, cool. I don't want to hit that bullet point one more time so it's clear. An ideal condition for a venue would be next to a lot of foot traffic that can be whose interests you can pique.
Yeah, we have a lot of strip malls here.
And that's why even in the fucking dead of summer, I'm not playing inside. This place has a large air-conditioned room. But I'm still playing outside when it's remotely tolerable. Even if nobody sits outside with me, I'm outside with the speaker, and I'm like, hey, guys, come on in. We got this special. And a lot of times I'll stand up after my break. I'll walk inside. The outdoor's dead. It's me and the bartender out there. I walk inside, and it's just bumping. And I'm not saying it's all me, but people know that there's bottomless mimosas because I'm out there saying bottomless mimosas on a microphone over and over again.
Yeah.
And they can still hear me inside. I leave the door open so I can get blasted with AC too. At the manager's request, they said that I could do that. And so they can hear me. People sometimes come out from inside and tip me, which is very nice.
You've had a couple of those gigs. I remember you had the old one at the Fort Myers BT.
Yes.
It's kind of same setup outdoors, but it was kind of open as well.
Yeah, one of my longest gigs was down on Fort Myers Beach, and I was outside. It was great. It was great. A lot of people walking around, a lot of tourists walking around, seeing live music on its big patio, and it's just people walk right up to it. If they're looking for it, that's where they go. So that's a good one. Sorry, you were saying something. I interrupted you. Just
your old gig at Bell Tower, at your brunch gig you used to have there, very similar to what you have at Mercado now.
Yeah, that was a great gig, man. They really fucked that up. That's we got a cautionary tale for bar managers. Not that this podcast is tailored for bar managers, but it's a cautionary tale for musicians too. Just something to be aware of. It's just a horror story, not a horror story, but it's a story about managers not knowing what the fuck they were doing, not knowing exactly what the fuck it was we were doing, not understanding what was working, and they just shot themselves right in the foot and us at the same time. It was a duo gig, and it was one of our better ones. And they, long story short, they fired us and hired a cheaper act, and it was probably like almost free. It was like a brand new girl who had like just kind of started, played piano and sang, and just they were just like, oh my god, $50, cool. And it's an example of somebody kind of not knowing what they're doing, undercutting somebody by accident, and not understanding what they could be worth. And it was a catastrophic mistake for the brunch. I mean, it killed the brunch. Well, there are people coming there every week to see us.
That business was around for over a decade and a half, and it is no longer in existence.
That's interesting. I'm not going to take full credit for that, but the brunch definitely fell way the fuck through after we left. The people, like the very next week, it was like the people were like, where'd our dudes go?
Yeah. I mean, it was they just never located in the middle of the town. It was like the only thing that this mall really had going on a Sunday morning.
Yeah, it was great.
It was a draw.
It was great. I mean, it was underpaying for modern day Peter. I would be like, no, thank you.
Oh yeah,
but
it was a duo.
It was a duo gig too. Yeah, we'll talk about why that's not.
But I'm glad we brought that up because that's another thing that we didn't really mention as a red flag, and that's when you get multiple double bookings from the same bar. And it probably isn't as common, but it's definitely something that happens, and that's taking away potential money you could have made. Yeah,
so I've got a script for being double booked, especially if you're not set up first. Typically, the guy who's set up first should keep the gig. I would say, if you're correct that you've double booked and it's not his mistake, if he's just mistaken and he was I'm here on the wrong day, then he needs to get the fuck off the stage and give you back your gig. But if you actually have been double booked, a lot of times, whoever's set up first is just like, I'm not gonna have you break down so I can get on. Like, what's my It's a good case for showing up to gigs early, especially if you suspect somebody might have fucked something up. But another thing is if a full band is there, 3 people have called off work or whatever they do to get to this gig, and you're a solo guy. I had this happen recently. They had double booked a band and a solo act. I'm like, I'm not going to fucking send 3 guys home so I can do my solo act. That's ridiculous, you know? That gig ended up getting rained out anyway. But that's neither here nor there. What I do is I text the person. I say, look, this has been double booked. 99% of the time, they'll acknowledge that it was their mistake if it was, which you should have everything in text. Mm-hmm. You should make sure you have your gigs booked through text as well. If you have a phone call, that's fine. Text them to confirm, and they have them saying yes in a text.
Yeah, you want everything on paper.
Or exactly. You should be able to take a screenshot and be like, look, you did book me, and look, this guy has a screenshot too. You did book him. Anyway, so I say, okay, I'm not setting up. You can pay me half, and I'll go home. It's Friday night. I have to get paid. Mm-hmm. But instead of $250, you can give me $125. Mail it to this address. Thanks so much. It's a pleasure working with you.
Yeah.
And like 100% of the time, they'll say yes to that. Should be. And if they say no to that, then I wouldn't work with them anymore.
Yeah, I was going to say
they can't steal your Friday night away, and just say I think you're just going to have to go fuck yourself. Actually,
and that comes back to knowing your value.
Yeah. Yep. So yes, multiple double bookings from the same spot can be a red flag, but
there are ways to combat that.
There are ways to combat it, and also there are things that can make up for it. Like I don't want to say just like you should just cut ties with anybody who does any of these things. Like this particular gig that I'm talking about, I love playing there. The tips are again like insane. It's actually outside at this same mall. A different venue picked me up within the same mall. This tells you something about the region, and it's specifically that mall. A lot of demand for live music, and somebody finds a good one and they want to book you. So I played another place in this same mall, and the tips. It's an outdoor thing. The tips are amazing. Like there's like. You draw a crowd from all around. It's so much fun as far as cover gigs go. And people get into it, and they just tip and tip and tip and tip and tip. Mm-hmm. There's so many people, and the place pays me well. And, it's just a great gig. I love it.
Is that a brunch gig as well?
No, it's an evening gig.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyway.
So, in conclusion, a couple of things we went over today, talking about the city, the region, and the venue, and the ideal conditions for them, and some red flags when you're dealing with booking agents and or bar managers or just venue managers. And we will have some course notes for you, including I believe we're going to put Keith's information in there.
Yeah, let's do a little shout out to Keith. I'm going to ask him if that's okay. If not, then we can
Keith up
edit it out, but.
And
Keith Klug, yeah, he's great. If you're in Atlanta, check him out.
We'll have our email addresses up there as well because we want your email addresses.
Yes.
Give us your email addresses.
Yeah.
We want to
sell you stuff.
You. This is the
Not
time.
Not just sell you stuff. We're going to give you a lot of free stuff. Yeah, we're going to communicate. We want to know
what you're experiencing. Where are you?
I want to know all about it. I want to also, while we were talking about Keith, I would like to have people like that on the podcast. I want to hear what his actual kind of story is, and maybe we'll do that as like a little mini series.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Tight.
Cool. Thanks, guys. We'll see you next time.
Have a great day. Be safe.